fence expert. Who's that guy in that orange shirt? Who must be the fence expert? It's almost time to talk about the fences. It's time to discuss operations and expenses. It's time, it's really time to elevate small businesses. It's time for Joe to drop his knowledge. It's relentless. This rhyme of mine is getting a bit ridiculous. So here we go. We're live with Joe. Enjoy the show.
What is up, Fence fam? So good to be back with you guys. It's like the second week in a row. We're on a roll here. Appreciate you guys tuning in. If you guys are new here, this is a show where we talk about any and all things fencing related. Before we jump right into the content, which today is all about you and your questions, before we get into that, as always, I'd like to start off by thanking Caleb and Ashley Roth and the Expert Professional Wood Care Products team. Go for Wood as well. Yeah, they take great care of us. They'll probably take great care of you. Not probably. They will. They'll take great care of you. You could see this by jumping into their free Facebook group. You see lots of people giving feedback on quick shipments, accurate shipments, that sort of thing. So it's good to see that we're not the only ones here at Ozark Fence. Now, I've been a customer longer than they've been a sponsor. They're a sponsor because I was a customer, I guess. But we switched to them. We had used a lot of other fence stains that you find in the fencing market, and it was a bit put off by the smell. It's one of those things where if it smells like a chemical, it's probably got chemicals in it, and I'm concerned about obviously putting myself, my team member, but also our customers, their pets, their kids that are likely going to come in contact with this fence, in contact with the stain. They sent me out a sample. First impressions was you pop the top, mix it up, no chemical smell, no stink. So I was probably 4 or 5 years, no longer than that. So that's the thing about pandemic. It always skews how long you think things were. It's probably 7 or 8 years ago now. But ever since then, we've been loyal customers of the expert team. Great stains. We do pre-dipping here. We also sell to contractors in the Springfield metro area that do on-site staining and sealing, all with great results. If you're looking for a fence stain, you ought to try out Expert Professional Wood Care Products. Reach out to Caleb Ashley and the team, and they will take great care of you, just like they take great care of us. Remember, it's a stain that doesn't stink. With all that being said, so today, if you read the title, you know that today is all about you answering any and all of your questions. We'll be here for an hour plus. If you've got questions, I'll take a crack at it. Then the fence family in the chat will also take a crack at it and see if we can't help you out here. If you're listening to this on the podcast, you are listening to a recorded conversation or recorded version of a live conversation I host most every Saturday, where we talk about anything and everything fencing related. For example, next week we've got Andrew Martin coming back on. We're going to talk about anything and everything finance. We'll see what topic he has on. I was actually looking at my notes for our last conversation with Andrew, just kind of get myself ready for next week. So we talked about having a strong financial foundation to build on when we're talking about, retirements, when we're talking about financial independence, that sort of thing. You have to have a strong foundation to build upon. And so next week we're going to go ahead and build upon that conversation. So guys, if you're listening to this on the podcast, if you'd like to join the conversation and be part of the live conversation, search my name, Joe Everest, on YouTube, Facebook. LinkedIn is going to get reconnected very soon, I promise. YouTube and Facebook for now. Jump in. We've got a lot of comments already piling up, both on Facebook and YouTube. So it looks like a little bit of both. We'd sure like to have you guys there. Also, if you're listening on the podcast, team says that it makes a big difference if you leave a review, just an honest review about your experience with the channel. If it's helped you at all, it would mean a lot to me and the team if you were to take a few minutes, leave us a review. All right. All that being said, let's get to the chat. Justin was here early, like almost an hour before the live started, saying, "Good morning from sunny and beautiful Omaha, Nebraska, where stupid people are hoarding toilet paper again." We'll talk about the port strike. We're saving Nebraska one deck at a time. Make America great again. Justin, I absolutely love it. Justin goes on to say, booked out till weather allows, so this fall, and booking 2025 jobs now. Listening to leaders like you allows a small man like myself to grow every year. Justin, both figuratively and specifically, in real life, you are not a small person. So, and also in the business world, also not a small person, Justin, but appreciate you tuning in. So something to talk about, Justin, if you're still here, or if you come back around, talking about actions you took, I'm guessing probably earlier this year, to stay booked up in the fall and then booking into the spring. It's something we're going to be talking about a bit at Tony Thornton's business conference and coming up in Branson in December. We're also going to take a few minutes and talk about upcoming events. We've got Fence Installation School we're less than a month away from. So we are going to talk about calendar events as well. What events are you going to that we should put on our calendar? Roger Bencourt, what's up, Roger? Hello, Joe, and the rest of the Fence fam. Hello, Roger. Appreciate you joining us, as always. Front Rock Fences, we know these guys. Good morning from Calgary, the frozen north. Well, it's not frozen yet, but finishing up the season soon, heading to the Sunshine State. Ahead of the freeze, hopefully. I've got a Front Rock /Fence expert hat coming your way. Send it. I'll wear it. I promise you. Appreciate you stopping by earlier this year. Probably from your trip. I believe it was your trip back from the Sunshine State to the north. Mark Harrella says, good morning, Joe. Good morning, Mark. Appreciate you tuning in. Josh Rand, Aloha Fence. Good morning, friend. Aloha, friend. Fence Guy Friday. Good morning, sir. Come on. Good morning, Craig. If you guys are looking for additional fencing related content, be sure to tune in to Fence Guy Friday. Craig Eubanks hosts a live conversation, sometimes with guests, sometimes solo, every Friday afternoon, and just talks about fence. It's a great show. I think you'd enjoy it. Check out, well, everything's backwards. Whoop, there we go. Fence Guy Friday. Point the right direction. Here we go. Everybody check out Fence Guy Friday. Good morning, Craig. Whoop. Aaron Preston says, hey, Joe. Good morning, sir. Good morning, Aaron. Appreciate you tuning in. Robert Lucker. What's up, Robert? Hey. How goes it, my dude and dudettes? It goes well. North American Fencing Contractors. What's up, NAFCA? Good morning, sir. NAFCA has decided to postpone the Arlington project into November in order to coordinate much-needed aid to North Carolina, October 25th through 27th. Details there. Check those out. Let me look at a calendar real quick. So that's bumping up on, let's see, 25th would be a Friday, 27th. Okay, so it's over a weekend, such as the Arlington project. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I will be checking out the details. You should as well. So the Arlington project, we were there last year, had a great time replacing some fence at the National Cemetery. It makes sense for us to take our fencing skills and put them to use in another useful way down there in North Carolina. Absolutely. So check out the link. I will be checking out after the show. What's up, Justin? Still listening, doing company fun outing, pickleball, and then wing challenge and college football while talking business with employees. Justin, this sounds like an incredible time. Pickleball and wing challenge. So we've got an event. We've got a food event coming up here called Wingapalooza. Actually, you guys, if you follow the channel, you've seen it before. So when we were doing Week in the Life series, we covered a little bit about Wingapalooza and what it is. We raise money for kids, but wing contests are always a good time. I'm going to figure out how to turn this into a video, or at least part of a video. But so we needed, well, let me answer your guys' questions. Then we'll talk about our week in review, and we'll talk about your week in review, your questions, that sort of thing. The phone's ringing off the hook still. I love it, Aaron. I love it. We're seeing the same thing here in Southwest Missouri. So we lost one of our receptionists, was a niece of mine. She went off to college. So we've lost her, and the amount of overflow calls. So for those of you that would like to know, our call flow chart started with Pamela, and then overflow was handled by Autumn, or I think it would ring 3 times to Autumn and then ring out to us, everyone else, everyone that had a connected phone. So Holly Down Accounting, myself, Sarah, Jim. Actually, I say that. Not every connected phone. Didn't ring out to the shop or down to e-commerce. But anyway, but that being said, we had a few line of defenses before the phone on the desk rang on my office. Now, without Pamela here, the call volume is still crazy. It is still heavy. So phone's ringing more on my desk, which is good. Keep that phone ringing, and I'm happy to answer it. So, Aaron, I'm happy to hear that the phone's ringing for you as well. Craig says, appreciate it. Also have Fence Guy Friday merch. Hey, t-shirt coming your way. Craig, thank you very much. I think you guys can look forward to seeing a new shirt on the show. We'll do like a special edition. I like wearing these shirts, but I also like supporting good shows, so we can make that happen. Jess says, going to try to attend Finch Show 2025, Stay in Steel University, February 25, and listen and watch podcasts like this for continuous improvement and growth. Absolutely. You should check out FinTech. So FinTech's actually going to be up, relatively, not closer to you than me, up in Salt Lake City. So that would be a bit bigger show, probably more vendors, probably more education. But be sure to check that out. It's going to be February. This is why I put things in my calendar. What's that?
The last 3 days of February.
Last 3 days of February. That absolutely makes sense. Yes. So the trade show is going to open Friday, but education likely starts Wednesday, Thursday. So, last week in February, spilling over into early March. So, going to be a great time in Salt Lake City. If you guys watch the channel, you've seen our preview walk of Salt Lake City. There, the Salt Palace. Great place, easy to get into. Justin, you ought to check it out. It would be likely a great time. Sorry for the plug. No worries. Turkey for Soldiers is also kicking off this week, helping military families get a turkey for the holidays. Justin, as always, sign us up. And how can I get more information to share out with the Fence fam? I know we all like taking care of people. It seems like, that's one thing I love about the Fence family is you get some guys in need and the family steps up. We had a fencing professional here in Missouri. It was a home intruder type situation that led to him being shot and still recovering. The last I'd heard, still recovering and still looking for the perpetrator there. But the Fence family stepped up in a huge way. I mean, the medical bills, it wasn't simply a gunshot. It actually did quite a bit of damage. So Fence family stepped up. Huge way. I love that about being in the Fence family. So I sit on the board of the Midwest American Fence Association, the regional chapter, our regional chapter of the National Association, and it was day 2, day 3 after the storm went through. There was a kind of a text chain that went out, and then we recently, just this past week, had our monthly call and trying to figure out how we can get supplies, funds, whatever needed out that way. Because I'll tell you what, we had some tornadoes come through Oklahoma, which obviously heart of the Midwest chapter, and the Carolinas chapter was the first chapter to step up and send some money and ask how they could help and if we needed more and all that. So we want to make sure we help those that help us. We make sure we help the industry in general. So sorry, Justin, this flows straight into that. Turkey for Soldiers. This is a program I love, making sure soldiers have a meal for the holidays. So like I said, please sign me up. And then if you could, give me information. I'd love to share it here on the channel with others in the Fence fam, because I know through all these other experiences how giving and how caring our Fence family can be when it comes to those in need. Oscar says, good morning from Houston, Texas. Good morning, Oscar. I almost said good morning, Houston. Good morning, Oscar. Appreciate you joining us. Win Lunt says, do you mix concrete in the post hole in a wheelbarrow? How do you usually set your wood post? Well, I tell you what, I don't know if you do it or not, but you're going to kick off an incredible conversation about concrete. So more than one way to achieve a task, right? So there are contractors that mix in the hole. There are contractors that mix in a wheelbarrow. There are contractors that mix in a dedicated concrete mixer, whether it's brought to the hole or left on the truck. There's guys that will pour dry concrete in and compact it. Now, the compaction is absolutely one of the most critical steps in this. Hear me when I say you can't simply pour in a dry mix and kind of step on it a little bit and it's good. It will not be good. But there's guys that'll actually compact it. So they'll take a concrete vibrator and they'll run it. They'll kind of layer it like lasagna. They'll put a base layer, compact it, another layer, compact. So they're compacting all the way up, and leads to an incredibly strong post that you can immediately build on. But then obviously, depending on region, depending on soil conditions, but it will act as a sponge and absorb all the moisture out of the surrounding soil as well. So it'll eventually end up setting up there as well. So, but your question is, do we mix in the hole in the wheelbarrow? So it depends on projects. Prefer to pre-mix and then pour into the hole and then put post into, depending on, I guess, the type of fence. A lot of times, depending on space considerations, project, etc., we'll mix in the hole. It's water in, concrete to just at water level, mix, and then so again, kind of lasagna, kind of build that up, making sure that we don't just. One of the other ways is pour water in, pour an entire bag of concrete, pour water on top, and then just assume that the water will make its way to the middle and it'll absorb it. It will, but anyway. So we prefer to pre-mix. That way we know we'll use pre-bagged concrete, either, Sackcrete, Quickcrete come to mind there. We'll use that product, pre-mix, pour in the hole, put the post in the hole. That way we're sure we get a nice coating around the post. Make sure if it's a chain link post that it's getting up inside the post to try to really grab that as much as possible. Is how we do it. But as I say, Just because we do it that way doesn't necessarily mean any other way is not correct. Because, like I said, this whole conversation for the hour will talk about concrete if we let it get too out of control. Company I used didn't have your pre-made galvanized frame in stock. Can I use 16 gauge, 1.5 inch square tubing to attach to shark hinges, 4x6 frame? Cedar pickets going on frame, 100%. Absolutely. We make those up. We ship them nationwide. And when we do, we use 1.5 inch, 16 gauge square galvanized. And we'll pre-drill it with holes that will line up with where the hinges and latch go on a shark for use with shark hardware. Cedar pickets going on frame. Love it. Yes, you can, is the answer. Justin says, info to be shared next week. Prayers for all dealing with a storm recovery on the East Coast. This is a heck of a time, guys. It absolutely is. It's a crazy time. So for someone, I spent the first 12 years of my life there in North Carolina, in Raleigh. But we would kind of travel with my dad's job. He ran a not-for-profit, so they did telethons in different towns to raise money for this not-for-profit. And anyway, so we touched most of North Carolina in one way or another. We'd stop at telethons across the state. So heart goes out to the folks and to the towns I've been to there. And now it's not only North Carolina. I mean, yeah, to the point, East Coast up and down. I mean, you had the storms combined with the port shut down for 3 days, which we'll get to that here in just a second. But yeah, so absolutely prayers for those on the East Coast, especially Fence Fam. I know a call went out both from our board to the board there at Carolinas, but as you can imagine, there's a lot of cleanup going on out there. But also I saw in one of the Facebook groups someone who had called out asking for, who needed help. Somebody in the area had a skid steer and had a truck that could get into the area. The problem's going to be getting into Western North Carolina right now from areas west and north of North Carolina. So like I-40 shut down, I believe, to like early 2025. And then, what is it? There's an interstate that runs north there out of Western North Carolina. And they're saying it's something like late 25, early 26 or something. I would assume bridge damage, that sort of thing. So getting in and out to get that aid is going to be a whole nother set of problems, I believe. John, I think we asked, let's see. Okay. Can I use black powder coated? Yes. Yep. So you would just, using 095 post. So the post we use would be a CS40 post, just to make sure that thick enough, heavy enough. But yeah, so you can use black powder coated. I mean, obviously, you would want to remove the powder coated. I assume that you're fabricating it yourself, welding it yourself. So just prep it properly. It'll work, no problem. The frame I'm making is for a sloped hill, but I want to keep top rail level. Could you explain best practice on how you would construct the frame? Well, I mean, we would build a hillside gate. I want to keep the rail level. So when you say level, I mean, so if we're talking about there's a slope, you're building up a slope or down a slope, whichever, but you're wanting to keep the entire fence level. You could do that depending on the slope. I mean, so if it's a 2-foot slope over a area, you would start at 4 foot, go up to 6 foot tall pickets. You could keep that. Now the gate would be a little bit tricky, but I mean, you could build a square frame. Just depends on the height of where, if you're starting at 4 foot pickets, going up to 6 foot to accommodate the 2 foot slope. Just depends where that gate's going to lay. I'm trying to picture this in my head though. So the frame, make it for a sloped hill. So we would normally build a hillside. So we would just measure the slope over the opening, build the gate for that slope. I believe Matt's got a video on the channel of exactly how he does that. Could you explain best practice on how you would construct the frame? So possibly refer to Matt's video because he's going to show it with a little bit more detail. I'm just confused, I guess, of the question. We're keeping the rails level, but we're on a hillside. So little clarification, be happy to help. All right, so I know there's questions. Oh, so Justin started talking about, Justin started talking about toilet paper. Silliest thing I'd ever heard of. But I mean, we had it going on here. Wife went to Costco, and she said, "You're not going to believe this. There's no toilet paper." I said, "You're kidding me." Nope, no toilet paper. And then of course she gets mad. She's like, "Do we? There's some." Like, but the shelves are pretty empty, but they're bringing more out. Should we grab some? Well, I said only if we need some. Like if we need a package, so I mean, think Costco, big packages. But we got 5 people living in a house, so anyway, if we need some, grab some. If we don't need it, leave it there. And she's like, "Well, what about?" So this is the port thing, right? Everyone heard about these port strikes, guys. Something like. Yeah, and I'm going off numbers that I listen to on a podcast, but for toilet paper, because the podcast was talking in economics, I listened to NPR's. They've got a few good podcasts about economics. One of them was talking about toilet paper. Something like 73% of the toilet paper is made in the United States. The other 27% comes from Canada and Mexico. So none of the toilet paper. Maybe not none, I don't know, but near none of the toilet paper on your shelf, or maybe none, comes to the East Coast ports. They don't make it in Europe. They don't make it in Africa. I mean, maybe they do, but they don't make it and export it to us. We don't import toilet paper or paper products from the East Coast, from West India, from Africa, from anywhere in the Mediterranean, Central South America, which is typically where the areas importing into the United States that were affected is East Coast and Gulf Coast. Ports got shut down. Now, anyway, toilet paper is completely silly. People at Charmin, I'm sure, were loving this. And now people have. I saw. I want to say it was a fence guy on my Facebook. He had a post pop up that said, congratulations, the port strike's over. Now you can go build. Now you can go play in your forts made of toilet paper or something like that. Your toilet paper forts. This is just silly now as it was before. Just toilet paper shortages blow my mind in general, but we made it through. We made it on the other side for now. So the port shortage, I'd almost made a post. I was gonna talk about it today. The port shut down, the labor strike, and then probably make a post about it following the live. That it absolutely would affect the fencing industry. So I said Western India. So, well, Mediterranean, Western. I mean, there's the majority of the fence fittings come from India, China. Not for the United States, but I guess Pakistan also, there's some sort of steel industry in Pakistan. But the 3 top exporters of galvanized steel fittings would be India, China, Pakistan. I know there's probably other places that produce steel, but in terms of volume, it seems like mostly India and a lot of China. Now, China's going to come out, depending on where most of it ships out of Eastern China, I guess, and comes through the West Coast ports. So if you're importing stuff from China, likely it's coming in through the West Coast, which we've already gone through West Coast port issues when we were going through the pandemic. I mean, I can remember, watching news reports or then scanning the horizon at night, and it looks like a city out on the ocean for all these cargo ships trying to bring freight in. So then people started repositioning or reshipping into the Gulf Coast. No problem. Or started buying from India. So our fence fittings at Ozark Fence, our galvanized fittings, largely come from India, one way or the other, whether we're buying it direct or we're buying it through there's a few things that we'll buy through wholesalers, all come through the East Coast. We have a container, actually it's still sitting there right now. So it got unloaded, it's from India. It got unloaded in Newark Friday. It's supposed to have been on a train Sunday, ahead of the strike. The strike was Tuesday. Well, midnight between Monday and Tuesday. Or it could have been loaded Monday. But no, not loaded, still sitting in Newark. So we were sitting here thinking, what are we going to do to replace a container load of fittings? Reaching out to importers that have warehouses here in the United States to see if they had stock, and everyone did for a while. So that's the thing is most suppliers are going to hold, depending on the supplier, will hold 3 month plus or minus supply. There's some that seem like it's probably more than that, depending on their volume. But I don't think the fence industry was in, obviously this wasn't going to affect us immediately. I know there's places like Mercedes saying, hey, the cars are not coming in. If it lasts for more than a week, it would, yada, yada. We weren't in that dire of need, but I'm just saying it would have affected. So likely what I was going to talk about looking for was going to be watching supply. So getting in contact with suppliers, keeping in contact with them. One of the things we did, so we sell a few items more than a lot of other items on Amazon. And so we'd reach out to that supplier, said, hey, how is stock right now? And so, well, here's some stocking numbers for you. We went ahead and ordered a pallet of these things. One of the things, because we're getting low anyway, and I didn't want to be caught without it. So I was going to recommend to you guys, reach out to suppliers, check inventory levels. Also, one thing to keep an eye on moving forward is going to be cost. So the cargo carriers, this whole disagreement was between the cargo carriers, which they're all represented as a conglomerate, I guess, and the ILA, the International Longshoremen Association, would assume. But the longshoremen. So the shipping carriers are saying, well, in order to pay for this, we're going to have to add some sort of surcharge, because they were wanting like 77%. I want to say they ended up at somewhere like 65%, into 60%, but goes through January 15th, I believe. Need to go back and read the details of this thing, but I believe it goes through January. So in a few months, we could be right back in the same thing. So my understanding is longshoremen is a two-prong ask. One ask is for more money. I believe they're wanting to be compensated closer to those longshoremen on the West Coast, which who knows. But also part of it was no automation or AI in the ports, which is confusing because there's a few ports on the East Coast that already have some automation in place. So I'd watched videos months ago about some automation coming into these ports, and they'll have basically a motorized trailer. So they'll set a container on, and that dude just goes buzzing off to wherever this thing's going to go. And so a little bit of automation, still a lot of human control, loading and unloading that thing, obviously unloading and unloading the ships coming in, but there's already automation coming into these ports. I thought I'd had. So listening to the gentleman talk, a little bit. Reading comments. We're going to get to a few of these comments as well. So I was watching the longshoreman gentleman, the representative of the union, which, if you believe what you see on social media, if you believe that, this gentleman makes a lot of money. So a lot of the comments were saying something about like the rich are arguing with the mega rich, and the rest of us just want our stuff, basically. But this gentleman was making the point about, they were going to choke the industry. They're going to shut down all the ports. They're going to show how powerful they were because they didn't want this automation. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, if I was one of these cargo ship companies, and maybe we did come to an agreement, so these agreements are typically made 6 months or 6 years at a time. I would, and you've got to think they are, for the next 5.5 years, investing every penny they have in automation and AI, because this strike proves the need to not be relying on human labor, right? So AI doesn't go on strike, automation doesn't go on strike. It shows up arguably, probably more reliably. And the point I heard the cargo companies making during all this was that in the next 12 years, the flow of cargo through ports, all ports in the United States, East Coast, West Coast, Gulf Coast, is supposed to increase by like 50%, something like 50%. They're just trying to make sure, because I'm sure they're having the same problems everyone else is in terms of finding a labor force. in our neck of the woods, in our world, our part of the industry, we're having trouble finding skilled labor that is consistent, that is all of this. So you got to think that they're doing the same thing. So they're seeing a projection of a 50% increase in traffic through the reports, but they're not able to scale up now. So some of the reports were that they couldn't even catch up they haven't even caught up from pre-pandemic levels as far as hiring goes. And they're projecting a 50% increase. So they're thinking, my understanding is they're thinking of it as this is a way to increase efficiency, to increase throughput, without having to try to find more labor, train more labor, and rely on it to consistently come in. And then this strike just probably further proves out that thought that they need to come to some other arrangement, some other option other than relying on human labor, because human labor, to their point with these unions, and I go back and forth on unions. Depends. I've got friends that are on the Teamster side. I obviously know fence company owners that are on the company side of being. So you hear all this. One of my best friends here in town has a company, not a fencing related company, but they do have a union shop or union side of the company. And so you hear the company side of all this too. Depending on the issue, I could go. Depending on the issue, sometimes I'm labor, sometimes I'm company. But on this, I mean, you got to side with. I would think you would side with the companies, and especially hearing what the pay is already for, crane operators or like this union speaker himself. Anyway, so I can see where the company's coming from, saying, and I think they offered something like a 45% pay increase, which how many of us would love a 44% guaranteed over the next 6 years, regardless of what the economy does, regardless of what, throughput looks like? If I'm guaranteed to get 45% increase, maybe that sounds pretty good. Now, it's not as much as people on the West Coast, but I think people here in the Midwest understand the cost of living is different depending on where you are. I've got to think some of the ports on the East Coast have a lower cost of living than, say, Los Angeles, right? So I think all things are relative there. Anyway, brief reprieve. So I think they agreed it's in the 60 or 65% pay increase. And then January they reconvene, likely to talk about this automation and AI. But I can't understand talking about how some ports already are implementing automation and AI, like how do you walk that thing back? How do you unwind that? I don't see that. And I understand one of their arguments is, hey, these are going to put guys out of work, which we've already covered that. I mean, the cargo companies are saying, not only are you guys not getting out of work, we don't have enough of you guys. So, and we're seeing more ships come through here. We need more containers moved. This is how we're going to move more containers. But even not so, you got to think that throughout our history of the United States, you've seen eras like this. For example, when's the last time you've met a stagecoach driver? Like, that does it professionally. Now, my sister, she does these chuck wagon races. If you see me at a show, talk to me about these things. They are wild and crazy, and they're awesome. But professional that does this as a living, stagecoach driver. I mean, the point is they got passed up by innovation, right? So you didn't see a stagecoach union shutting down stagecoaches, or maybe you did because the advent of motorized traffic, right? Motorized transportation. But now the modern version, I guess you could call it like a bus driver, right? So whether it was a local coach, which would be a city bus, or whether it was a Pony Express type coach that going across the country, which I would say would be like a Greyhound. You could also say pilots, airline pilots, right? So moving large groups of people from point A to point B. They advanced and overcame. Now, maybe stagecoach drivers didn't keep up, and maybe they did something else. The point is, we can't stifle innovation and advancement. Imagine if we all rode around in stagecoaches still because the stagecoach union wouldn't let innovation pass, right? Like, probably less efficient way of transporting goods. So anyway, I understand they started off with TP, but also the port situation. So Justin, thank you for bringing up the hoarding teepee because it brought up this whole conversation. But keep an eye on the ports, guys. Depending on what type of fence you do, so chain link fence likely would be heavily affected. The fittings also, no, not so much the strand, or the wire. So I'm thinking of raw materials too coming in and out. But a lot of that, so China's the number one importer of scrap, exporter of refined metals. So like steel ingots that might be heated up and drawn into wire, that sort of thing. That all should be coming through the West Coast. So that wouldn't be affected. But fittings, really anything coming out of India, none of the fence stuff, I don't know, maybe not none of the fence stuff. I would hazard to guess a lot of the fence stuff does not come out of Europe, Africa, Central South America, probably not as well. But never know, I guess. I could be wrong. That's just my understanding of this. But so keep an eye on it, especially if you do chain link fence in regards to the fittings. January 15th, January-ish is when they renew or sit back down at the table talks, trying to renegotiate the deal, negotiation table. So pay attention to that. Let me scroll up. All right. So John's talking about, let's refresh ourselves here. The frame is for a sloped hill, but want to keep the top rail level. All right. I want to top cap cedar rail. Okay, we're capping it. Cap and trim, but the bottom will account for slope. I mean, that seems like a pretty straightforward, like it depends on the slope. So if it's like a 4-foot drop, that's probably not going to be, I mean, you could accommodate it, I would guess, with 8-foot pickets. So anything's an option there, I guess. It depends on the slope. So the question was, I guess, in regards to the frame, right? So the frame making for a sloped hill, but and that's, so, I mean, you could, if you're fabricating the frame yourself, I mean, you could fabricate, you don't have to fabricate it as a version of a square, right? So a square or a rectangle, it depends on the width, okay. But just, you don't, the top and bottom don't have to parallel each other, I guess. The top and bottom rail don't have to. It looks nicer when they do, but they don't have to. So you could obviously, need like a little whiteboard where we can draw here. But you can keep your top straight. If you're fabricating this yourself, you can keep your top straight and then run your bottom at the angle. If I would have paid more attention in geometry, I could tell you which type of shape that is. But anyway, I think that's definitely doable. I will give you my hand drawing idea here, or my hand drawing of what's in my head. Let's keep in mind I'm a fence guy, not an artist, okay? But this is what we're thinking, is what it sounds like. So we've got the top cap that is straight across. We've got, we've got the bottom that is following grade. So you can make the top level with the top cap, and you can make the bottom follow the terrain. So now, I mean, I would assume that as you're running these bottom rails are following the terrain. So your gate would likely just follow how you're framing up the fence anyway. But you would have your top rails here, your bottom rail here. This is what I think you're talking about. But I mean, if you're fabricating it, figure out a few more measurements, but the fabrication's the same on this as it is a square frame gate. So it would just be taking measurements, figuring that out. So I hope that helps. That's how I would do it. That's how we would start off doing it. Now, a lot of what we do is a little bit of trial and error too. So start off with, probably don't fully weld this thing. If you've got questions, I mean, you could tack it, take it out, make sure that it fits kind of what you're thinking, and then finish the fabrication on it. Look at this. Mark's on his game. Check out the video on slope fences here. There you go. Justin says, proud to say plenty of baby oil on shelves here in Nebraska. And no diddy. Well, okay. We'll just leave that one alone. John says, LOL. All right. Brad Jones, what's up, Brad? Have you heard of a company called Procter & Gamble, probably the largest TP maker in the United States and Canada? That's the point, right? So the I'm trying to think how far up the food chain you'd have to go, because you also think about raw goods, right? So maybe raw goods run out, so finished goods run out over a period of time. But I mean, you've got to think somebody like that likely owns the majority of their supply chain, meaning that, I mean, paper pulp, there's a good chance they own that, right? And the cardboard rolls in the middle, they probably have that part of supply chain too. So the logs they're using, so there's a paper plant in southeast Missouri that you've got to drive through to go to Nashville. You want to talk about an unholy smell. That place is it. But so you got to think that a lot of that stuff is made domestically as well. And I count Canada as domestically. We're not technically, we're importing it because it crosses a border, but we're not bringing it through a seaport, right? So Brad's point is absolutely the one, is toilet paper, paper towels, paper products in general. Like, don't go run buy a bunch of paper plates either. So it's all coming from here, folks. Corey Bigelow, what's up, Corey? So this is the one I started reading, and I thought about it while I was in the middle talking about something else. And so, what ratios do you use for accounts receivable to cash on hand? Obviously, it varies, but what ratio percentages do you expect, or do you view it as 1 month sales equals AR and cash flow equals 3 months? Yep, so those aren't necessarily dependent on each other for us. So for cash flow, I like to have 3 months of expenses cash on hand, so that if we hit a dip, we can cover all of our payables. We can make rent, or we can pay the bank for the note. We can pay the utilities to keep the lights on. We can pay fuel, that sort of thing. 3 months cash on hand makes me feel good. It depends on what your personal preference towards risk is as well. I mean, if you were less risk adverse, you could say maybe a month and a half. That would make me very nervous. And here's why. It's because if accounts receivable, I understand they're connected, but not in the way we're thinking about. If accounts receivable does start stretching, right? So if it goes from, we do a lot of commercial work, so average day to pay is somewhere around 45 days. So if we see that stretch from 45 days to 55 days, we're going to start paying attention, right? If it gets to 60 days, we're paying a lot of attention, because, again, we're keeping cash on hand for 3 months. Well, we know if average day to pay right now is 60 days, we're already at 2 out of those 3 months we're keeping in reserve. So maybe we need to do a few things. Start keeping more cash on hand. So say, our goal until this spring comes back, our goal is to keep 4 months cash on hand, which would tighten the belt even more, right? But right now we haven't. So you want to keep an eye on average days to pay on accounts receivable. We haven't seen any blips in the radar. So in July we were paying attention to this, because the call flow, the call volume was not coming in nearly as heavily as we would think it should come in July. Our average calls per day were down in July. And we saw this on Facebook as well. A lot of the conversations in July late July were revolving around, where did the leads go? My phone's not ringing. I'm not getting quotes, whatever, requests for quote. So we kept a very sharp eye on accounts receivable, average days to pay, because I wanted to see if those two things were related. So maybe it's an economy thing, which if it was, I think, and again, I'm a fence guy, I'm not an economist, but I think you would see both of those slide. You would see your call volume come down, but also you'd see your average days to pay start stretching out. If people didn't have the money to keep up with the economy or keep up with their bills, they would start stretching out average days to pay. They would just take longer to pay, and they wouldn't be calling services to have new services performed. We didn't see AR slip, so I think it was people on vacation. The economy probably had something to do with it, right? So people are less confident, so they're holding on to money a little bit longer. But the money that they've already committed to spending, they're still meeting those obligations. They're still paying their bills on time, and we didn't see our average days to pay slip. There's also an argument in this that since we do more commercial than residential, commercial should be largely in the same boat as us, as having cash on hand for a period of days or a period of months. So if we're saying ours is 90 days, theirs might, whatever their thresholds are, but you might see it might take a little bit longer for average days to pay slip if it's an economy thing. Anyway, so all of this is reading tea leaves, right? So it's trying to take data in, shuffle data around, try to interpret it, figure out what's going on. But that's how we interpret it. So what ratios? So no direct ratio from AR to cash on hand, but accounts receivable, we like to see it about 45 days. So average days to pay, and then cash flow 3 months. So I guess there is a ratio to that, though, right? So if average days to pay is 45 days, 1.5 months, cash flow is 3 months. So maybe if average days to pay goes to 2, then cash flow goes to 4. Interesting. So this is why we do shows like this, is to think through why we do things the way we do. So I would suppose, I guess you could say there is a ratio here. We're all discovering this together. I hadn't really put them together like that. But anyway, so I hope that answers your question, Corey. Great question. Keep these coming. We're at 52 minutes, so if we start slowing down on chat, we can wind this up here in about 8 minutes. But if you guys have questions, I'm here for it. I'm happy to help you. Corey says, the auto workers strike, they demanded no layoffs more than wages. That's very hard for a company with uncertainties. Absolutely, especially over 6 years. Imagine, guys, so you're running a fence company, and you have to negotiate wages and employment terms with your team of employees to say, and you're doing this over a course of 6 years. I don't know what the auto workers contracts, how long those are, but the ILA was 6 years. Can you imagine trying to forecast 6 years and talk about no layoffs? So I would think what that would lead to, if I knew I couldn't lay anyone off, then I just wouldn't. I would run with bare bones for as long as I would run with the minimum required staffing to perform, whatever throughput we're looking for. Just knowing that, hey, if that throughput drops, I can't lay these guys off. So I'm only adding guys as I'm absolutely required to. So a stipulation like this might lead to actually less employment. If there's no flexibility, if you can't lay anyone off, then you're not going to bring anybody on that you absolutely just don't need right that day. There's guys that are passionately on one side or the other of the union debate. I think they were purposeful in the past. Auto workers in particular, I understand, and in manufacturing, they led to job site safety. They led to, more reasonable hours, more reasonable pay. I get that. I don't know that in our current environment that they're as effective as they have been in the past. But like I said, depending on the issue, I can fall on either side depending on what the issue is. Josh Rand, the top can be straight, square with uprights, bottom slope equal to the gate. Easy, just hold it. Okay, there we are. Josh and I agree with each other. It sounds like we both said the same thing, I think. Josh probably said it first. I just took longer to getting to it. Fitz Guy Friday, what's up? The new Bob Ross. I don't know what this is a reference to. So I'm a minute catching up on these. So I probably this comment's from like about 10 minutes ago. Craig, fill me in on the context here. The new Bob Ross. John says, perfect. Thanks. That's exactly what I was thinking. Great. Happy that we could help you. Just as if you ever watched the Walking Dead series and wondered who the Walking Dead would be, it's the same people hoarding toilet paper and other products domestically produced. Lions, not sheep. So there's a whole conversation here about being prepared and not being as reliant. So there's a lot of people. Well, so there's a term in retail, wholesale, or service side, I guess, just-in-time inventory. So the idea that it comes into the warehouse right before your crew needs it to go back out, or you need to send it out, or so to keep your inventory at such low levels that you only have on hand, which you absolutely have to have, and that you will be turning soon, to keep your overhead lower, to keep your, just the cash you have into this inventory, keep it lower. But so people start doing this personally. They don't call it just in time, but they go and buy toilet paper when they need it. They buy food as they need it. What happens if that supply shuts off, that flow shuts off, right? What happens if you can't just go to, Walmart, Price Cutter? Well, Price Cutter's regional, I don't know. But if you go to your local supermarket and there is no meat on the shelves, well, what are you going to do, right? Or there is no toilet paper, God forbid. What would you do? Well, and so the idea is, so we're talking about keeping 3 months of cash flow set aside so that if things slow down, then we could accommodate that without just completely going upside down. The thought here is also that you would do this at your home as well. We're not going to get into a whole prepping conversation here, but I think there's something to it though, for having on hand a period of days or months worth of some sort of supply so that you can be self-reliant rather than queuing up at a supermarket to buy toilet paper or whatever it is you might need. So anyway, just a thought. Brad says AR to cash. I think it also depends on how long your season is. Some only have 7 months, so that's fair too. So that's a great point. So everyone's numbers will be different. Commercial versus residential will differ too. Yeah. So we know that going into winter that our production will slow. We'll do less business in the winter than we do in the summer, and the ratios are different depending on commercial, residential, e-commerce, but everything does tend to slow in the winter. Now, to Brad's point, the further north you get, you go from, or Justin was talking about earlier, they've got work booked until the season tells them the season's over, and then they're looking at, starting back up in 2025. So your cash reserve needs could be quite different if you knew, hey, we're not going to have 3 months worth of production. You probably want to keep 5 months on hand, right? Knowing that you've got 3, but you want to give yourself a buffer. If you know it's 3, what happens if you have a longer winter? Or what happens if spring doesn't kick off as soon? Or what happens if there's a slowdown over the winter and spring doesn't come at all in terms of production? So, Brad, that's a great point, that it depends on your ratio of commercial to residential. It also depends on what your season looks like. There's guys in the South that maybe don't have seasons at all, right? That they just plow through and they've got great building weather all year long. And so this would all vary. So what I'm saying is what's accurate for us here in the Southwest, where we know it slows down, but it doesn't, Southwest Missouri, the Midwest, but it doesn't actually ever shut off. Brad, that's a great point. Oh, my drawing. It's missing what is happy mistakes. Happy mistakes become birds, or isn't that what I think that's what it is? Something like that. I've seen enough TikToks. I think that's what he says. Yeah. So we're I don't know. This is not Bob Ross, but maybe one day when I just have tons of time and my happy little mistakes will become birds. Corey Bigelow says, how many years have you been the fence expert? I'm guessing this was during the slowdown, but has it been a stretch to fit during the crazy COVID? But has been a stretch. Well, so I've had this show, if that's what you're asking. It was, do we know when this thing started? Like first videos? 2017, 18 maybe?
The first video released on this channel is November 13, 2019.
2019. Okay, there you go. Well, okay, that makes sense. Because we were doing Ozark fence stuff so just like Craig's doing Fence Guy Friday, we had Ask a Fence Guy Friday on Ozark Fence for a while. Anyway, 2019. So 5 years, I suppose. I guess this was during the slowdown, so we've seen that, but has been a stretch to fit in during the crazy COVID years. I'm not sure where we're going with the question, Corey. Did I confuse that? I probably confused myself with your question. Oh no! Anyone else knows the AFA posted FinTech 2026 in Indianapolis on the events page? Actually, yeah, that's where it is. FinTech 2026 is in Indianapolis. Yeah, so maybe they just announced it early. Usually they'll announce it at the FinTech. Now they've already secured the site, so they typically do that several years in advance because I believe after Indianapolis, don't quote me on this, but I believe it's going West Coast. So someone on the national board can, if you're watching, can chime in and let us know for sure. But yeah, so maybe they haven't announced it yet, but it sounds like it's on the events tab. 2026 is in Indy. Going to see Shane Catton up there in his crazy cruise. Josh says, just in time is what we're working towards. We'll still stock some things that we have high demand for. Bulk purchase hinges, latches, grab the discount. Joe, you're going to want to sneak over to our new location in February for a revisit. 100%, Josh. Yeah. So stay tuned to that. So we did a shop tour with Josh when we were in Salt Lake City for the mid-year meeting, for AFA's mid-year meeting ahead of FinTech. So, but since then, Josh has moved to a new location. So maybe we'll do a shop tour revisited, a where are they now sort of thing, which typically where are they now is like a period of years later, but this could be 6 months later. So I'm absolutely excited for that. So the first part, you're working towards just in time. The part that makes me nervous about that is if you do have a hiccup in your supply chain, then it affects your customers and it affects your business. So there needs to be some sort of buffer, I think, so that should supplies not show up just in time, that it doesn't affect customer experience and cash flow, right? So because if the customer doesn't have a fence, they're not going to pay for it. And if you can't finish the fence because some of your parts didn't come in, then you're pretty well stuck on it. So I like keeping parts on hand. So usually a couple months supply of some things, but to each their own, right? So that's the great thing about this industry is we are all free in this country. We're all free to run a business in the way that we see fit. And in Josh's market, this likely works. In my market, it would make me nervous because we're 3 hours from any of the main suppliers. Whether you're talking about Tulsa, Kansas City, St. Louis, 3 hours. So we can't run down to the supply house, right? So typically, for some reason, they all show up on Thursdays. No matter what the supplier, no matter where they're coming out of, Thursdays are Springfield days. So if that doesn't make the truck on Thursday, you're waiting until the next week. Unless you've got a good relationship, maybe they meet you somewhere, maybe they ship it down special. But just in time, that's a disadvantage to just in time, is that if there's a bump in the road, it could affect your business. Craig says, can't wait for FinTech Indianapolis. That's right, we're going to see Craig as well. Heck yeah. Floating Paradise. Sounds nice. Hello from South Florida. Hello, South Florida. Is there a preferred fence for possible saltwater flooding and salt air? Aluminum does really well. So there's a lot of guys, if we're talking about ornamental, aluminum does really well. If we're talking about chain link, now the galvanizing you're still going to see surface coating, but the galvanized is salt spray tested typically. If it meets ASTM standards, it does meet that standard. But you could go like a vinyl coated route, that sort of thing, to provide a little bit more. Vinyl is pretty, salt air doesn't really matter to vinyl. Yeah. So but that's why aluminum is big in coastal areas. So East Coast, Gulf Coast, West Coast, aluminum is great in those markets. Now, I'll say this about steel, about ornamental steel. So we're right down the road from Maristar. They'll offer a lifetime warranty on their coated products. So now you got to install it right. You can't just cut it, not treat the cuts, not seal the cuts. But yeah, so any one of those would be great options for you. It depends on what you're going for. Are you going for privacy? Because then maybe vinyl, but vinyl's not exactly, talking about South Florida, it's not exactly, the best performance in storms, which none of these are likely going to be. Installation practices also come into effect on that. So, yeah. Our homeowner's park just installed a rubber plastic coated chain link fence. Yep, so vinyl coated. Great option. So the vinyl coating is going to add another layer of protection before the galvanized. So most of this, if not all of it, so I'm trying to think of maybe something that isn't. It's galvanized and then it's vinyl coated over the galvanized, or powder coated. It could also be powder. Anyway, so all right. So it's coated over galvanized typically. You should be in good shape. Jorge wants to know what KPIs do we track? So depends on what sector of the business, right? So we were talking about average days to pay, average days of cash on hand. So that would be more on the accounts payable, accounts receivable side. Sales side, we're tracking calls per day, we're tracking quotes per day, we're tracking conversion percentage, so how many of those quotes turn into jobs. We're also tracking average job costs and average gross profit, just to see, hey, are the jobs getting bigger but the profit's shrinking, or are the job sizes getting smaller and the profit's increasing? Hopefully they're doing it in those proportions. Hopefully they're not getting smaller and the profits are also getting smaller. In fabrication, we're watching, production per day. So in fabricating, it would be gates per day or square foot of gates per day. E-commerce is going to be both sales per day and packages throughput, packages output per day. Really, production per day is what we're largely keeping an eye on, except for counting, of course. I'm trying to think of what areas of KPIs we keep an eye on. It depends where we're at. Also, overall, the company, we're watching average net profit on a 30-day look back on previous 30 days to see, is average net profit slipping? If it is, why? Like, do we know why? So if we had a big materials come in for a project that hasn't started yet, technically net profit would slip, right? Net profit percentage would slip because we've had this expense, but we haven't had the revenue for it yet. So as long as we can explain it, yeah. So really, that's the one I watch, and then the team leaders in different areas are watching their own. And then if I see something concerning, then we'll dig a little bit further into it and see where it's off. Corey Bigelow says, talking supply chain, when we buy OZ Wireworks, it is not stuck at a port or ship. Corey, great point. No, so I'm trying to think here. Well, obviously I don't know where the galvanizing compounds come from, but our supply chain is not affected by the port at Ozark Wireworks. No part of the wire comes from a seaport at all. So, very good point. Brad says, great show. Thanks, Joe. I'm off to unload a truckload. Brad, get at it. I love seeing some of Brad's posts where, today's Saturday, and he's out there unloading a truck, getting guys ready for Monday. I love seeing guys support their guys, right? So, Brad, if you guys haven't met Brad Jones at one of these shows, you 100% should. Great guy, great for the industry. Let me scroll back up, make sure I'm answering everyone's questions, make sure I caught everyone's comments and questions. If you guys have comments, questions, suggestions, etc., drop them now, or you can hold them until next week. That's fine too. Like I said, Andrew Martin's coming on next week to talk about finance, to talk about how we're building on that financial foundation that we talked about building last time. All right. We're scanning. Said good morning, everybody. We did see that NAFCA is pivoting on the projects. The link is in the chat. Probably ought to bring one of the NAFCA folks on to talk about that. All right. Justin's doing a company outing. We talked about John's questions about, so top cap is cap and trim, but the bottom has a slope. How we're going to accommodate for that. We saw my picture that Craig believes is Bob Ross-esque. I argue that it doesn't have any happy birds in it, so it can't be that close to Bob Ross. But we talked about toilet paper, how that's kind of crazy. We talked about AR to cash. AFA didn't announce, but they posted Indianapolis 2026 Fence Tech in the events page. I think we're good. think we're wrapping up. Guys, let's talk about a few things on the calendar coming up. We've got the Midwest AFA. So if you are in Oklahoma, Missouri, Northwest Arkansas, Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa. Did I catch them all? I think I did. If you're in one of these states, you're in the Midwest AFA. If you're not in the Midwest AFA, but you are in the St. Louis market, either way, if you are or you are not, and you're in the St. Louis market, the Midwest AFA chapter is hosting a dinner in Chesterfield, Missouri at the Maristar Distribution Center in Chesterfield, Missouri. More information to come. I'll have a whole infographic. We'll probably create a page to put a link in and everything. But that's coming up November 2nd, first Friday in November. Let me pull out this calendar. Yep, November the 1st. So November the 1st in St. Louis, we're hosting a dinner, meet and greet. And so this is part of a larger plan for the Midwest. That the Midwest region is really big. I'm going to go through this again. Northwest Arkansas, kind of northern Arkansas. Oklahoma, Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa. If you're in one of those states, you're in the Midwest. But lately, in the last few years, a lot of the events have been held in Oklahoma. So we're wanting to kind of stretch our legs out into these different communities. So St. Louis is the first one, November 1st, where AFA comes to the Midwest AFA comes to one of its member cities, hosts a dinner. Vendors are going to come in. We're going to have a great dinner. So barbecue, be on the lookout for some great barbecue in St. Louis. We're also talking about bringing it to like Kansas City, possibly like Lincoln, Omaha, going up maybe Des Moines, somewhere up in Iowa, Kansas. So Kansas City, I guess, also kind of catches Kansas, but maybe somewhere western Kansas, and then obviously Oklahoma. Keep an eye out for that. First one, November 1st in St. Louis, Midwest AFA. Watch the channel. We'll have a sign-up link. We'll have information. We'll do all that. Next up, Fence Installation School, which will be that Sunday. So Friday, AFA dinner, St. Louis. Sunday starts Fence Installation School. It's Sunday through Saturday, so it's a full week of training. Well, I say through Saturday. Saturday, you head home. Sunday, everyone gets there. There's a brief walkthrough. There's a dinner Sunday night, and then Monday kicks off. We're talking the main fence disciplines. We're talking about, golly, so chain link, vinyl, ornamental, ag. There's another one. Chain link, wood. How did I forget wood? Chain link, wood, vinyl, ornamental, agricultural. So each of the 5 disciplines. So everyone going through the school will spend a day in each discipline. So it's not necessarily you're sending one person to specialize. You're running them through all of the trainings. So we're sending a team member here, a newer team member who has shown some leadership potential and has kind of expressed an intent to learn as much as they can to work up into a team leader position. So we'll be bringing a team member from Ozark Fence with us. I will be there as well for the Fence Expert Show, where we'll be covering it. Just, hey, here's what goes on. AFA is also going to have some videographers there doing kind of like more polished type content, that sort of thing. So keep an eye on their channel as well. So American Fence Association has a YouTube channel. You should check it out to stay up to date with what they're doing. So Fence Installation School. Next thing after that, early December is going to be Tony Thornton's business conference down in Branson, Missouri, kind of in my backyard. You'll want, if you're interested in growing your business, you'll want to be there. There's some massive names. So Tony put out a graphic this past week talking about who all is going to be there. I'll be there, but also there's giants. So Robert Whitaker, I believe, Matt Warner, Andrew Martin's going to be there as well. There's going to be, this is the thing about naming people, is I know I left people out. I apologize. Those are the ones that came to my head when I'm trying to like visualize the graphic. Huge conference, bunch of talent, bunch of guys. I'm excited to go to take notes, to sit at the back of the room to learn from these guys that are going to be there. Mark it on your calendars. Tony Thornton's business conference coming up early December. And then we skip to FinTech in Salt Lake City. It's going to be incredible. I'm excited to go. I wasn't able to go to the last Fence Tech that was at Salt Lake City. I absolutely missed out from everything I've heard. Not going to miss out again. Me and the team are going to be on a plane, come up to Salt Lake City in February. So if you know of something else happening in the fencing industry, always be sure to send it to me. Happy to look at it. Let's scroll back up here because as I said that, I was like, well, wait a minute. NAFCA told us about their service project October 25th through the 27th. So details are in the link below, or now it's in the chat. I'll read it. So I'll read it out for those of you listening to the podcast. It's of course the HTTPS, the number 4 NAFCA. That's NAFCA.com/NC. So click on the link or point your internet browser towards that URL and for more information on helping out the victims of North Carolina however we can through NAFCA. Thank you, NAFCA. All right, guys, let's see. I think we're good. I don't see any more comments. Guys, appreciate you tuning in with me, sticking this through, asking great questions. Excuse me, that led to an incredible conversation. I hope you guys got value out of this. I know I always do. If you're watching this as a recorded version of the live conversation, so this will all get rebroadcast as a recorded live. If you're watching this, you weren't able to tune in, absolutely okay. Still drop your comments below. I get notified when comments come through. I try to answer them as much as I can in a somewhat timely manner. Doesn't always happen. It's not always an option. But anyway, if you're watching this, you have more questions, drop in the comments below or come see us next Saturday. Same time, same place, 10 a.m. Central on Saturday with Andrew Martin talking about anything and everything financial, building on that financial foundation, I said it right that time, that we talked about doing last time. Guys, for now, Joe Everest, the fence expert, reminding you that good fences make good neighbors, and I'll see you next time.